So when I'd be in the world, I would get sir and him and he. And that for me always made me feel uncomfortable. It just didn't feel like who I really was. Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. My name is Alexis Blake. Welcome if you're new here. Hello. I am a trans woman and I share my life stories and opinions on social media. So today we're jumping in to passing. It's a big topic and we're just going to try and scratch the surface today. Before we jump into like the whole passing privilege, how it can be used against trans people and for trans people, and how it can be used against trans people by other trans people. That's something that's new to me and very strange. But I do want to do a little disclaimer at the start of the video. These are just my opinions. It's just my experience with passing-ish and life and how I view things. It's just all my opinion. So just take it with a grain of salt. If it's not your opinion, that's great. Let's have a conversation in the comments below. We're all different human beings. We all think different things. Anyway, now that's out the way, let's dive straight in. First things first, what is passing? So passing basically means, in a nutshell, that you pass as the gender you are presenting as. So for me, for instance, it would mean I am passing as a woman. For a lot of trans people, not all, but a lot of trans people, it is the goal of transition to pass as that gender. Why do trans people want to pass? Do they need to pass? That's something else we're going to cover later on. We're going to react to some videos as well. But just going back in history a little bit, only about 40 years ago during the 80s, when trans women transitioned, they had to pass for survival. You would struggle to get any sort of work. You would receive so much hatred in the street, physically and verbally. And just life would, and it still is to some degree, easier and smoother if you pass. Like, let's just be completely blunt, cards on the table. I'm just going to say it as it is. If a trans woman goes into a female bathroom who passes, no one blinks an eyelid because no one would ever know. Whereas if a trans woman who goes into that same bathroom who doesn't pass, there might be some sort of looks. It's important to look back. That's what I'm trying to say. It's important to look back on why passing used to be such a big deal and it's not as much of a big deal anymore. I'm going to give like my opinion here in the video before we react to some other creators and other trans people talk about passing, because I just want to get my opinion out first. So, for me personally and my transition, a big part of my personal gender dysphoria was that I was seen as a man. So when I'd be in the world, I would get sir and him and he. And that for me always made me feel uncomfortable. It just didn't feel like who I really was. So my whole purpose for the surgeries, the hormones, the way I do my hair, my makeup, the way I dress, it is all to try and pass best possible. Again, it's just very personal to me. I don't always pass. I get comments a lot about me having passing privilege. When I go out, which is very rare, without makeup on, in comfy clothes, without all the bits and bobs that I do, I don't fully pass, and people do clock me. Even when I'm fully Alexified like I am now, I still have male-sized feet and hands and I'm tall. So people do still clock me on occasion. It's far less now than it used to be, but there is occasions, especially without makeup, I definitely get clocked. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just part of being a trans woman. Let's watch a video to break it up because I don't want to like do information overload. Also, while I remember now, comment below on what you think about passing, because I think passing has so many good things, but it also has so many bad things as well, especially within the trans community itself. So let's watch this video. Just to give you some context, this video is just some trans people answering what the first words are that come into their head when someone says to them, passing. Let's discuss.
I know before transitioning, I wasn't what you would call passing, but it just always felt like this unobtainable goal that I was trying to reach, and once I did reach it, it just seemed really insignificant.
Degrading. I don't want to pass. I want to be seen for who I am.
Okay, we're going to pause it there. There's a little bit more which we'll watch in a moment. The guy with the blue hair, I'm guessing he's a trans man, he said that passing was a huge goal for transition until it happened and then it seemed insignificant. Spoiler alert, it's insignificant now because you passed. Just to sort of play devil's advocate, the last guy said passing, the whole terminology is degrading and he wants to be seen as who he is. The way that my brain works for me personally, when I'm seen as a woman, that means that I feel like I'm being seen for who I am in here. That's because that's how I've always felt and that's how I feel. I know the outer shell and biologically that's a little bit different to that, but always in here I've always felt like that. So when people see me as a woman, that's them seeing me as me. Let's watch a little bit more of the video.
Survival. It meant that you could walk safely down the street, You could go to and from work. You could have a job.
Unfortunate. So I pass as a man. I don't identify as a man. I identify as non-binary, but I pass as a man. For people who are transgender men and who identify strongly as men, they're not passing as men, they just are men. And the idea that they are passing is not as men, but as cisgender.
I'm going to slightly disagree with that last one. It's just my opinion, and I'm not saying this to sort of like pander to anyone. There's always going to be a difference between me, a trans woman, and a woman. When people say there's not, to me it just confuses me because there just is in my eyes, and I'm okay with that. I'm genuinely fine with that. One experience I do want to talk about that is to do with sort of passing and not passing from my own personal experience that I learned a lot from, and how people can treat other human beings, which is just wild to me. When I was in an old job, I was somewhat passing. I just started there. I think I was blending in, and it wasn't necessarily it was an older age demographic, mainly men, so I don't think they like watched a lot of trans people online or knew a lot about trans people, so they didn't seem to notice at first until I was outed in this new job. That's when I had an awful experience. They were mean, they laughed, they made jokes, things like that. I'm working in a really masculine environment. When I got the job, I thought I would just be in the office, so I wouldn't see any of the men. I can handle quite a lot. I'm a really strong person. But someone I know from before I transitioned and became me, I think they've told people, and now they're all talking about me and saying really nasty things. I don't even want to go back in. But that experience of not passing and how people could treat me shocked me. And I thought I was quite like feet on the ground, my head's not in the clouds. I don't know fully how the world works, but I know how cruel people can be. And I thought I was prepared for it, and I really wasn't. And in the end, I couldn't handle it and I had to leave that job. But going from there to now, I don't think anyone knows. And I'm now just treated as a woman, as Alexis, and there's no sort of double takes and looks, and that to me there in itself means that transition for me personally is working, and that's what my goal always was. And I feel almost guilty for saying that, and I feel like some trans people might not like that I'm saying that, and then I'll also get your passing privileges showing, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. That feeling of being treated better, it's not acceptable what happened in the old job, and if I was treated better there, maybe passing wouldn't be as important. But because society's still not always there yet, passing helps in that way, if that makes sense. So I don't want to sound like a woe is me at the moment, and please don't take this like that. I really hope that doesn't come across. But when I get the comments that say things like, your passing privilege is showing, or you have passing privilege, I understand that. I'm a human being. I know that when I go around the supermarket and don't get stared at or little whispers anymore as much, that is a privilege, and I appreciate that. What it feels like to me when people say your passing privilege is showing, it takes away from the work, because I didn't just take some hormones and poof, I was Alexis. And I don't want to sound like a martyr here, and it probably is going to, so I'm really sorry. But my transition has been 3 years long. I've had multiple surgeries, electrolysis, laser. I've worked on my makeup skills, hair, clothing. I think about all these things a lot, and I try and put a lot of effort into all those things. And because I know I'm lucky to be able to do that, but when people say you have passing privilege, it almost takes away from the hard work that my transition has been, because it hasn't always been easy, and there has been bumps in the road, and I've not always passed. I have had many times where I have been very visibly trans. Next question, should a trans person want to pass? No, not every trans person goal is to pass, but the one thing I will say, that trans person wants to be treated as the gender that they're identifying as. So me, for instance, imagine I was old me with a beard, and I'm like, right, I'm a trans woman, I'm going to transition, but I don't make any physical effort to transition or change. The world won't treat me as a woman because they will still see a man. It's kind of that simple. But if I didn't care about that and how other people treat me and pronoun slips and things like that, then that would be okay for me. But for me, that wasn't okay. I wanted the world to see me as in here. I wanted that to show on the outside. But not everyone's goal is to pass. And also one other thing to mention as well, not everyone can pass. Sometimes, depending on your age, depending on financial situation, depending on where you live in the world, depending on laws, there's so much that can go into passing. We can get surgeries to help, and the hormones and, like I said, laser and electrolysis and clothing and styling and everything helps with that. But not everyone can, and I don't think anyone is less of or deserves to be treated worse if they can't pass. For me, it's all about the effort. So when I was going into the female toilet before and I had a 5 o'clock shadow and I had like a £20 wig on and you could very visibly see I was trans, the women mostly, not always, but mostly were nice to me in those situations because they could see that I was trying. I was nervous and terrified, but they could see I was trying. And I think for me, if you want to be seen as that gender, there has to be some sort of like effort there. And I'm not saying you have to go and get all these different surgeries, but I think the effort to present as that gender, that's where like people can understand, oh, that's a trans woman. And then that's where that connection's made. I hope that makes sense. Again, it's just my opinion. What does it mean? Who knows? Do you know what? I have another video I want to react to and I want to talk about the passing in the trans community. Is it toxic? Which we will go into, but I think I'm going to have to make a second video because I don't want this video to be super long for you guys. So if you want to see that second video, it will be out very soon. Thank you so much for watching. If you do like this kind of content, please do like and subscribe. And of course, I encourage any comments below about your opinions on what I've spoken about today, as long as we can keep it as nice as possible. Please and thank you. Anyway, thank you so much. Bye.